Hi there, this is Jason Renshaw, and in this tutorial, I guess you could call it, I'm going to pass on some of my own tips regarding ELT, materials design and use. They're fairly basic ones, but they might give you some ideas if you're inclined to think a little bit more about how you present material and then how you use it in your English language classroom. So, looking at the screen right now, you're looking at a blank page. And this is always the starting point when you're designing some material for your class. So the first thing that everybody usually sort of starts with is, some actual material. And in this case, I've just come up with a text that I had floating about. It's about tsunamis. That's not all that important in terms of what the content is at the moment. That's a whole other matter, in terms of what the actual content is and whether it's appropriate for your class and what you're going to do with it. But just bear with me. This is a basic text that I've come up with for a class, and I've put it on the page like that. Now, as it stands at the moment, this is not, a bad piece of material. There's a lot we could do with that. There's a lot we could, sort of benefit. The students could benefit a lot from this in the class. There's a lot of room to do a lot of things around this text. But there is also a lot we could do with it that would result in a more professional looking piece of material that would show the learners that we've put a little bit more thought and effort into our material, but also to facilitate a nice structured lesson that can move in phases and can result in different kinds of activities interacting or leading out of this text. So let's have a look at the first change I would make to this basic text. And I would put in basically a header or a title bar there, and I've got a more exciting, I guess, title rather than tsunami. I've got killer waves. That's probably most of the learners that I've taught would think, wow, that's a much cooler name. I'm more interested already. But you notice how I've got a nice bold black line here to show the top of the page. And already this is looking a little bit more professional. Notice that I've left a reasonable gap between the header or the top bar and the top of the actual page. And that's actually important because when you use handouts with your learners, I find that the biggest problem a lot of people have is they end up with very cluttered handouts that are either, they're usually too full on. They've got too much on them. And then it becomes hard to do extra things with them. One of the reasons I like having this bit of space at the top is that for things like for the students to write their name on the handout, if it's something that's going to be handed in, or if I have extended this and done something more in the way of a group project, the other students' names could be included, and it's easy to spot, it's easy to see, without having to sort of pore over the manuscript, as it were. So I always like to leave a bit of space at the top, and with this bold sort of title and bar, this is also easier for reference, so that if the learners are going to put this away somewhere, it's a lot easier to find this particular topic and this particular set of activities than it would have been if we just had the text there sort of naked. So that's the first thing, is the top sort of header. Next is our footer. Now, what I've got, it's a very basic one that I've put down here. You can see I've just got a sort of swirling line. Already it sort of puts borders on our page that, sort of keep it looking a little neater and a little tidier. But you've noticed I've put copyright 2010, I've put my name, and I've also put my website, my resource site. Now that's because I did write this text myself. Obviously you don't want to write copyright if it's not your text. What you might like to do is actually, in this space here, is actually write your source. If it's an internet-based source, you could shorten the URL and write just the name of the site where you got it and the shortened URL. so that students can go and reference that. And that's also a bit of professional courtesy if you're going to source material from other sites or other writers. But always make sure you've got your name on your material that you use in class. Above and beyond showing the learners that this is something that you have made, this is something you have invested in, if you gather a lot of material and you decide to distribute it on the internet, that sort of thing, it's important that you give yourself credit for that, that you take some ownership of the materials that you design. And I've found generally by putting my name and my resource website on my materials, the learners tend to appreciate what I'm giving to them a lot more. They can see that this is something I've really put some effort into. It's not like I've ripped something off the internet and just slapped it on a page and taken it into class. I'm showing them that I'm professional about what I'm doing. And that can help to get a better response from the learners rather than a crumpled up bit of paper in the bottom of the backpack, so to speak. So I've got a header and a footer. Now, what else can we do with this? Well, we can add some sort of slogan or some sort of title for this kind of material. This is a very simple one. I've written talk time because what I'd like to do with this material is encourage more in the way of discussion and speaking. It's nothing all that flash. It's a shaded sort of addition there to the side, but it gives it a little bit more zing. It gives this idea of the supplement a bit more of a purpose and a theme, and it looks a little nicer. And that's something that you can slap onto your materials as well. Now, this is really important for me personally. It's something I call the quarter, three-quarter, or the 25-75 rule. And that is whenever I'm going to bring in material that I'm going to use for interactive purposes and communicative purposes in the classroom, it's important that whatever input I bring into the supplement only takes up 25% of the actual piece of paper, one corner of this one piece of paper. And that's because I can then ensure that 75% of the paper is going to be dedicated more to things that the learners are doing, that they're going to interact with this text and they're going to interact with each other. So it's important not to come in with really long texts and fill up your whole page with them, in my personal opinion. If you do, basically you're just showing them a book, and there is a lot you could do off that or out of that, but I like to have everything sort of interacting on one piece of paper. And it gives me a guideline in terms of how much material to write or to include in a supplement. So that's the 25-75 rule, and you can see I've just basically moved my text up and across so that it just takes up that top left hand corner of the page. Then what you can do is include something as basic as a line underneath your text, and now we've got two sections to our supplement that are very clear. We've got our input text up here at the top, and we've got a blank space down here at the bottom that we're going to do something in class with that space. And then we might also include a very sort of thin line here, and then we've got two sections, one below, one beside. This one beside the text is particularly useful if you're going to do something like help the learners with some of the vocabulary. Perhaps if it's more of a speaking oriented lesson, we could work on pronunciation and indicate things like syllable stress for certain words or parts of speech, or even chunks, small phrases and chunks within these sentences that we could pull out and look at a little more closely and work on. So this space here is something I tend to use to sort of interact with the text, and the space below is something I might use for activities that extend out of the text and more into the learner's own realm of interests and discussion. Now, something you might like to consider is actually replacing that line with just basically a shaded box underneath the text, and then you don't even need that line. You can see now that the that the supplement has a clear reading text, and it's got space beside it to the right, and it's got space below it underneath it. And now there's so much we can do with this basic supplement. We might investigate vocabulary or do some sort of work on better understanding certain aspects of this input. And then down here we might generate discussion questions, we might create a dialogue, we might extend our knowledge of this particular topic, and then have the students interact with each other and compare what they've written. There's a whole host of sort of activities that we could add, and I'll sort of demonstrate those for you in the next video in this series, actually using this basic text. You know, we could replace that text with a dialogue. Actually, we could have written a dialogue for the students. But this is one of my favorite basic layouts for materials design. I've got a clear header and a title that is easy to reference, easy to see. I've got a nice bit of clear space between the header and the top of the page for things like student details or reference points. I've got a footer that identifies me as the maker of this material, and a space if I need to reference, you know, where I got any of the information from. I've got a little bit of a slogan here that gives my supplements a sort of theme, and these things can actually be built in as a template that you can then go back and change and use in different ways with different texts. But already you can see it's a massive improvement on basically a basic bit of text. And you know, this works for me. I take this in with my learners and it looks nice. It's not over the top though. You can see that I haven't filled up the whole page. I haven't tried to put in tons of boxes or spaces or lines or anything like that. It looks accessible, and it looks like there's room to do something around this theme and around this text. And that's really, really important, I think, with materials design. And it's something that the learners are going to contribute something to. It's something they're going to bring their own ideas to, whether it's a sort of freestyle activity or whether it's something quite structured by the teacher. For me as a teacher also, I've sort of got stages. I've got my actual text, I've got something we can do with that text, and then something to extend from that text. And by keeping it on one page, I can also have the learners flip the page over and do some sort of project or task-based activity that leads out of this. And it's one photocopy. Basically, I can just photocopy this one page, and you know, it's not going to take me long to photocopy. It's not reams of paper that I'm going to be handing out to the learners. It's pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward. So I hope that gives you a couple of ideas and pointers about basic ELT materials design. This is what works for me. One final tip I would give you in terms of how I've made this is to use text boxes, particularly in Microsoft Word. I would never recommend actually typing anything directly into the document or using tables or anything like that. I always use text boxes because it allows me to float the text around the page wherever I want to put it, and it also allows me to not be inhibited by margins and things like that. So text boxes is a key tip. I've actually had hundreds of teachers I've worked with improve their materials design just by learning how to use text boxes in Microsoft Word. So I hope that's been helpful and given you some ideas, and I look forward to following this up for you with another video where I actually show what learners could be doing with this basic page. And I've got, you know, endless ideas for that as well. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it's been helpful.